Good evening. Yes, Atkins,
Here.
Hartley,
Here.
Holst,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Leeper,
Here.
Lynch,
Here.
Prideaux,
Here.
Saul.
Great.
All commissioners present.
Well, we are coming to you via video conference again this month due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we will plan on the second meeting in June also via video conference at this point. So people wanting to participate, we are on the Channel 15 YouTube channel as well as on Channel 15 on the cable for information. People who are interested in participating can get information from the city website with numbers to dial in or to connect by computer, etc. So we encourage people who want to participate to do that. With all that said, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the May 27th, 2020 meeting or suggest any corrections.
I'd move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have it's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have public comments potentially tonight. Let me just check on the attendees. If there's anybody here tuned in who would like to address the commission on something other than the business we have on the regular agenda for tonight, you can raise your hand or signal such, and you can address the commission. Give a moment for anybody. I'm seeing none. We'll carry on from public comments, and we have one item of old business to address tonight, and that is the downtown site plan review for Community Bank and Trust. And I'll turn it over to Karen Howard to introduce this item.
So I will share my screen here so everyone can see the PowerPoint presentation. Well, here we go. So can everyone see my screen? Is everyone able to see my screen?
Not seen it yet.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, now we're in business, right?
Yes. Looks
Okay.
good.
Okay, this is a request for a site plan review and downtown Central Business District overlay facade review at 312 West First Street. Here's a location map. It's at the corner of Clay and First Street.
Karen, all I see is your background of your computer screen. I don't know if I'm the only one.
That's all I'm seeing too.
Yep.
All right, got the wrong screen showing here. Hold on.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. Still don't think it's quite right here. Hold on a second.
There we go.
All right, everybody? Sorry about that. Okay, this is, again, a request for a site plan review for Community Bank and Trust, 312 West First Street. They're planning to build a new bank building on this site. They plan to demolish their existing building and build a 4,800 square foot new bank building. The new proposed design, as you might recall, we had a site plan review case on your agenda back on March 11th. After that meeting, the bank decided to withdraw that application. They had some other priorities they were working on with the pandemic and wanted to take a second look at the design of the building. So now they bring this back before you with a new design. I do want to note there is a correction from what was on the agenda. This new design was designed by Kirk Gross Company. It's 2,900 square foot in area. It still has a 2-lane drive-through on the south side. It has a large pedestrian entrance on Clay Street and a large entrance on the west facade for people arriving by car. It is a single-story structure, and like I said, the existing building will be demolished and a temporary structure will be used until the new building is constructed. The property sits in the C2 commercial zone, but it's also in the Central Business District overlay. Most of this review is related to the overlay standards in the zoning ordinance. The proposed use, of course, is a bank, and it is allowed in the Central District overlay and also in the C2 commercial zone. The setbacks, the ones that we are most concerned about, are the street side setbacks. It's about 8.5 feet from the north lot line along First Street, and a 17-foot setback from the east lot along Clay Street. In the Central Business District overlay, there is a maximum setback of 10 feet from the street side lot line. The purpose of that is to create a pedestrian-oriented building designs with buildings toward the street and close to the public sidewalk. This creates a more inviting environment and safer for walking and biking. The bank has pulled this new building, as opposed to its existing building. New building is pulled toward the corner. Although it does exceed on the Clay Street side, that does exceed that 10-foot setback. Exceptions to these overlay standards, as we discussed previously, may be considered if there are characteristics of the site or the building that make it difficult or infeasible to meet the requirements of the code. So I put here the review requirements for when people ask for an exception to the downtown standards. They must provide an explanation of why the standard can't be met or is difficult to be met, and then provide some evidence that the proposed building is uniquely designed to fit the characteristics of the site and the neighborhood and meets the intent of the Central Business District overlay. You may require alternative design solutions that helps to meet that intent of the ordinance. So in this particular case, there are some site conditions that make it a little bit challenging to create a street side entrance that's at grade and exceeds the 10-foot setback. It's sloping, and the location of the storm sewer easement at the corner make it difficult to meet that standard. The alternative design solution that the bank is proposing is providing a large terraced entrance with an accessible ramp along Clay Street to create a prominent, inviting, and accessible means of access to the building to meet those pedestrian-oriented design standards in the zoning ordinance. Staff feels like this is a good solution for the constraints of this particular site, is recommending approval of this exception to the maximum setback standard. With regard to parking requirements, there are no parking requirements in the Central Business District overlay for commercial uses. So, but the bank is providing 12 parking stalls for customers and employees to the building, so that parking requirement, of course, is satisfied. With regard to open space and landscaping, the parking that is provided and the vehicular areas are required to be screened from the street. In this case, there's boxwood shrubs and blue stem grasses along West First Street and Clay Street to screen those parking and drives. There are additional plantings along the west side of the building and the drive-through islands. And there's also planting beds along Clay Street between the public sidewalk and the access ramp. And then I would also note that in downtown, in the areas where we're implementing the downtown streetscape, applicants are required to reconstruct according to the downtown streetscape plan. So the bank has proposed a design that meets that standard. The city will be working with the developer and the bank when we get to the construction level plans to ensure that all those elements are placed correctly. Some of these elements may need to be shifted around a little bit to meet all the needs of the street in those locations, but in general, what they're showing here in the landscaping plan meets the intent of the downtown streetscape plan with the new brick pavers, the street lights, street trees, and there's light poles with banners along both First Street and Clay Street. I would note that the area south of the driveway along Clay Street will remain as is, with the understanding that the southern portion of the lot will be redeveloped with other uses in the near future. So it was felt that we didn't want to have that reconstructed with decorative streetscape elements and then have it be torn up or damaged when that southern portion of the site was redeveloped. So the city is entering into a development agreement with the bank about this site, and that will be something that's included in that development agreement. Staff feels the landscaping and streetscape elements do satisfy the requirements in the zoning ordinance. With regard to the design standards that are in the Central Business District overlay, talks about, has several different standards that we review. One is the proportion, that relationship of the width and height of the front elevations of this new building as compared to adjacent buildings. The idea is to sort of align horizontal elements, the windows and doorways, and provide elements of visual interest along the street. Blank walls are discouraged. You can see here, this is a sort of a perspective of the context of how the bank will fit into the site. You can see here kind of while the building is a one-story building, it is taller than other one-story buildings along the frontage. It does have the large canopy that generally lines up, you can see, with the Arabella building to the east, and has those storefront elements that are desired in the downtown. With regard to roof shape, pitch, and direction, it's proposed to be a flat roof design. That's very consistent with a lot of buildings in the downtown area. The pattern is reviewed. That means there needs to be alternating solid surfaces and openings to create a rhythm observable to viewers along the street. And as you can see here, there is definitely a rhythm to the storefront windows, the east, and the brick facade that's proposed along really all facades of the building. Particularly want to look at the street-facing facades, the Clay Street facade and the First Street facade. So all those east, west, and north facades do have alternating between large storefront windows and doors and that solid brick facade. The south facade is really configured to serve the drive-through customers, so it looks a little bit different. And of course, the canopy in the drive-through will block view largely of that side of the building. Staff feels that this standard is met. There is a building composition standard in the downtown overlay, which states that building walls greater than 50 feet in length must be divided into bays or modules with a minimum 20-foot, maximum 40-foot for those modules. These bays have to be tied together visually with a rhythm of repeating vertical elements such as window groupings, building materials, textures, that sort of thing. So here is the only wall that's street-facing wall that's longer than 50 feet. That's the Clay Street facade, and you can see here that it does present basically three different modules. A module at the corner with the three grouped windows, storefront windows, and then there's a center module with 3 different banks of grouped windows and the storefront entrance. And then, of course, on the south side, there's another grouping of windows. Basically, those modules are about 21 feet, 28 feet, and 21 feet. So it does meet that requirement. With regard to windows and transparency, the Central Business District overlay requires clear and transparent windows and doors. The glass that is proposed here is clear and transparent does have a low E treatment, but does have a high visible light transmission value of 72%. So staff finds that meets that requirement. There is also a window coverage standard in the code. It's required along street-facing facades that 70% between 2 and 10 feet in height above grade of the facade above grade must be storefront windows and doors that allow views into the interior of the building. On Clay Street, it's 60.6%, and along First Street, it's 66.3%. The applicant is requesting a minor exception due to the corner location. They've really maximized the windows around the east, north, and west facades. And if you had taken a look at the floor plan that was included in your packet, you can really see that the remainder of the solid facade is really needed for functionality of the space inside the bank. The code does allow mentions corner buildings as buildings that could be qualified for a reduction in this window coverage. So staff finds this meets that standard and recommends approval of the exception. With regards of materials and textures, the street-facing facades must be comprised of at least 50% brick, stone, or terracotta, with the side and rear walls being comprised of at least 25% brick, stone, or terracotta. Staff notes that the non-fenestrated, meaning the portion of the building that doesn't have windows, is comprised entirely of brick. So this standard is met. There's a color standard in there. Basically, to meet the color standard is just to meet other earth tone standards that are typical for downtown. This standard is met. There's two colors of brick proposed on the facade, and they're both are earth colored. Architectural features, just trying to have the building represent and fit into the downtown context. The proposed building is located really in that evolving area along First Street. So with some buildings that are newer, it doesn't really have a consistent character along First Street. The design of the building is modern, but it does have the storefront windows and brick facade typical of an urban storefront building, and it is similar to the existing Arabella building to the east. But it has horizontal banding of the brick facade, large transom windows, 2 different canopy styles, and there's a distinctive base, middle, and top of the design that's more traditional. Staff finds that the architectural detailing is consistent with similar new buildings in the area and fits well into the context and feels like this standard is met. With regard to building entrances, the focus of the standard in the code is to ensure that we have good pedestrian-oriented entrances. The code designates the north-south streets as primary streets, and it requires that there be an entrance, a primary entrance along primary streets. In this case, Clay Street would be considered the primary street. They do have a prominent entrance along Clay Street. That entranceway is accessible with a rate, but it is raised above grade. The applicant here is again requesting an exception to the code due to the sloping nature of the site. The ground elevation at the corner is approximately 4 feet below the floor elevation of the building. The entrance on the west side of the building is really tied to where that access easement goes north-south that have to be kept at that elevation to meet that requirement. Have to keep that access easement for the flower emmet in place. So that really ties this elevation to that east or south north-south access way. So it makes it difficult to make the Clay Street facade at grade. Staff finds that the terrace that's provided in large stoop entry, does provide a good transition from the public sidewalk to the building. Excuse me. In addition, the small plaza space, there's a small plaza space with a bench that's provided at the corner to create more pedestrian space. Staff recommends approval of an exception to the standard for the at-grade entrance due to the prominent entrance that they've provided to mitigate for the fact that it's not at grade. With regard to trash dumpsters, there is a dumpster located off the southwest corner of the drive-through. The dumpster will be enclosed within a brick enclosure. Stormwater management, they have submitted stormwater report, a preliminary report for the site. They're proposing water quality improvements to the site with an underground, a bioclean water quality intake. It'll collect that stormwater from the site and provide, clean the water before it releases into the storm sewer on Clay Street. Signage, there is preliminary signage shown on the building wall here. The downtown sign code allows wall signs that not to exceed 10% of the total wall area. Wall signage is shown on the west and the north wall of the building. The proposed signs are internally illuminated. The signs do not exceed the 10% allowance, so they meet their requirements. I would note that additional signage would be allowed on the east facade as well, and could be reviewed at the time to meet the standards. Permits would be required prior to installation. So staff finds the preliminary sign plan meets the standards in the zoning ordinance. So with that, staff recommends approval of case SP 19-017, a site plan and building design for a new bank facility located at the corner of First and Clay Street in the Central Business District Overlay Zoning District, subject to conformance to all city staff recommendations and technical requirements. I would be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Great. Well, thank you, Karen. Any questions for Karen before we offer up the applicant? All right. Hearing none, we have a number of attendees. I think we have some representatives from the bank. Would anybody like to make a comment, or maybe I'll just call on somebody? If you can raise, you know how to raise your hand. I can see who would like to. Here we go. Stacey, are you there?
I am.
Okay, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just wanted to take a second to tell you that we were pleased to do this resubmission. We learned a lot on the first one and felt like we listened to what everyone had to say and tried to come back with a design that was pleasing for all of us, and feel we did that. And we're really looking forward to this project and appreciate the help we received from Karen. And I do have Bob Seymour and also David Selinsky, our architect, on the line, and Kurt Gross. And so if there's any technical questions, we can handle those today. But I just wanted to tell you, we're excited about investing in downtown Cedar Falls, and we want to be a good corporate citizen, hence why we did this resubmission, and feel like it's a good benefit for all of us. So we wanted to let you know that we're proud to be part of Cedar Falls, and we didn't want to give a bad opinion the last time. So we're pleased with how this went this time.
Great. Thank you, Stacey. Bob or David, do you want to make any comments? You can raise your hand. I'll unmute you if you do. Not seeing. Oh, here we go. There. Bob, are you there? Bob, you should be able to. You should be live. I can get you. Let me try David. I'll allow you. David, are you there?
Yep, this is David. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'm David Selinsky with Kirk Gross, the architect and contractor for the project. And it is a very exciting project, and it's a pleasure to be able to participate in the delivery of this. And I think it's a facility that will enhance the fabric that is going on in the city of Cedar Falls, and it's going to fit very well and enhance the community.
Great. Any questions for David while we got him? All right.
Marty, I see Kim Bear is on the line and has her hand raised.
Yep, I was going to say, I will try. We'll open it up to others, and Kim, oops, we done with you. Kim, you should be able to speak. Are you there? I'll try again. How about now?
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes. There, we got
Okay,
you.
perfect. Thanks.
All right.
So I'm Kim Bear from Community Main Street, and I just wanted to comment on the design committee did get a chance to take a look at the new plans and appreciates how the initial feedback was taken into consideration, and we believe that the revised site plans complement the downtown district historical aesthetic and would like to see this project move forward. Obviously, so does the staff at the city. And we're thankful for the continued investment by the Community Bank and Trust.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Any questions for Kim? All right. Anyone else who would like to make a comment on this project who's in attendance, so if they could raise their hand, raise a hand, I'll recognize you. I'm not seeing anybody else. So at this point, I would bring it back to the commission for discussion and potential motion.
I think any of my concerns have been addressed from the previous design. I think they did a really nice job taking all of our concerns and feedback and making some really good changes and improvements.
Karen, I have one question for you. The project looks fine. I have a question about the kind of, how it fits into the kind of district overlay kind of density goals, and the same questions that I had last time. The project looks fine, but I guess I'm wondering what the city's perspective is. And we went through a pretty long process in terms of thinking about density downtown. And I guess I'd like to hear the city's perspective on how this one-story building fits into that.
So what we had to review against, of course, is the current code. But given the context of the downtown vision plan, I think there's a couple factors here. The location of the site, of course, along the highway does present some challenges here. The context here is a little bit more auto-oriented. We do have quite a few drive-through facilities along this area, and the new vision plan doesn't preclude that from occurring, but does encourage that to be done in a way that's more pedestrian oriented. So it's the balance of that auto-oriented nature of it and the pedestrian oriented nature, and I think they have kind of sliced that pretty carefully here for their needs, the bank's needs here in this First Street corridor. The other thing that I think is positive about this with regard to the downtown vision plan is the intent for the bank to allow redevelopment of the southern portion of their site. So the plan does encourage full utilization, of course, of our downtown land. And so with that future project in mind, that will help anchor the other side of this lot and create more of a streetscape along than Second Street in the future. So while the bank building is small and is only 1 story tall, I think given all of those factors and the particular location that it's in, away from the main retail core, I think we found that it kept that balance.
I guess personally, I still have concerns about, I'm sorry, Marty.
Okay.
Still have concern. It's a great project and I appreciate, certainly the investment downtown by Community Bank and Trust. I just conceptually have a problem. Not necessarily, it'd be one thing if it was a 1 story building that allowed for more density next to it, but it essentially takes this half block and precludes it from being developed with any kind of density, and it's a very I would say suburban solution for this urban site. So just my take.
I agree. It kind of does have that characteristic, but at the same time, they're battling the situation of what they need for program for their facility, and on that site, I'm sure they don't need a bigger bank than they're designing. So that does make tough our density goals, being met.
Oh, go ahead, Leanne.
I think we need to keep in mind that we are approving according to current code. And so it would be I understand both Brad and Marty's feelings on this, but we are to approve according to current code. I think they did do a good job of balancing it out. They are taking up a smaller portion of that whole piece of land than they were originally. So
yeah.
I would agree that they've done a good job of meeting our current code.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they've done the best they can do with the actual needs they have for their for their facility. So I don't know that we could ask of anything more of them.
Right.
Well, and I just feel like the design does look, from the previous one, it does fill the space a lot better, I feel. And also going into the development agreement with the city makes me feel more comfortable knowing that that's going to be, in the city's purview as well. So that's, I don't think we can ask of anything else.
Yeah, my comments are probably more directed to the city than Community Bank and Trust. I think they've done what they've been asked, but I would challenge the city to. I know this is a difficult situation because of program, but a really important site, and having some discussions early on in this process about that density before we get that far seems appropriate to me. So it's nothing against CBT. I think they've done what they've been asked to do.
Are there other just comments or discussion, or I'd entertain a motion if there's one.
I move to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Shelley? Yep.
Shelley seconded.
Yep. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there a further discussion or questions? Seeing none, I guess we can go ahead and vote. We'll have Karen call the roll call vote.
Okay. Atkins,
Yes.
Hartley,
Aye.
Holst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Leeper,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Prideaux,
Aye.
Saul.
Aye.
So that motion carries. What's the next steps for the project then, Karen? Is that moved to City Council fairly soon, or?
Yes, our plan is to, with your approval, This would move on to City Council and be on the agenda for next Monday's meeting.
Okay. So everybody's aware. So that concludes our regular business for tonight. Are there commission updates, Karen?
I don't have any updates for tonight.
And just a reminder that our next meeting is planned to be via video conference on June 24th, right?
That's correct. One more Zoom meeting, and then we'll have to reassess and see if we need to have more or whether we can move back into the council chambers.
Great. All right. Well, hearing nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor signify by aye.
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 I
We
didn't
are
see that.
adjourned. Thank you
I didn't-
everybody for participating. Okay.
Who was the second on that? I'm sorry.
It was
Dave.
Dave.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.